very briefly, but I lost all of you.
Yeah,
and now I don't see Mar anymore.
Mar has disappeared.
Yeah, she's
Right.
vanished.
Okay, so Adriana is telling me that we can start in a few minutes, and if the Facebook doesn't work, it doesn't matter because he's recording the session anyway, and he will be able to put it later on. To put it later on YouTube. Ah, okay.
Mar, you're back. Great.
Yes, I lost connection suddenly. I don't know what happened. Oh my God.
Part of the virtual reality, I think. Okay, should we begin then?
All right. Okay. Let me share my.
Shall I just introduce you quickly and let me introduce you and thank everybody? Okay, so I'd just like to briefly say then that, well, thank you to Jose Manuel, to Antonella, and to Adrian for organizing and putting together this dual conference, and also for this excellent synchronization in these times. I've got the pleasant job, as you know, of moderating the session, so I'm the kind of timekeeper today. And just to remind you, you each have 20 minutes. So after about 20 minutes, I will politely interrupt you. So please keep a note of the time. And then afterwards, we'll have 5 or 10 minutes for questions, which those of you watching from home or wherever you are can post on the chat. And those of you that are, well, I was going to say here, but kind of in this virtual room, the other speakers, perhaps you can also either post on the chat or we can join together for discussion afterwards. Okay. So I'll begin then by introducing our first speaker, who is María del Mar González Chacón. And María del Mar is an assistant professor at the University of Oviedo, where she lectures in English studies. And her main research focus is on contemporary Irish theatre, with a special interest in the rewriting of myths and adaptation of Spanish plays. And today she's going to be talking to us. The title of her talk is Myth and Imagined Modernity in Contemporary Irish Theatre, Angel Babel and Melt. So Mar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Thank you to all the organizers of the conference too. So as Lorraine said, my paper deals with the use of myth and imagined modernity into contemporary Irish plays. Angel Babel from 1999 and Melt from 2017. Angel Babel was written by Olwen Fury and Melt by Shane Markabird. And the first thing that I would like to do today is to thank both writers, both playwrights, because Angel Babel has not yet been published, and Fury sent me a video of its performance together with some other materials that I will use for this paper. And the other author, the other playwright, Shane, did the same. Some weeks before the play was published, he sent me the manuscript so I could send the proposal to this conference in time. He also, or both of them also offered to answer any questions that I might have. And I have to say that I did have questions because, as Lorraine has said, although I have dealt previously with this study of Irish, the relationship between Irish contemporary theatre and myths, I always did this from the perspective of the comparative analysis between Irish playwrights and the rewriting of classical Greek myths in order to redefine Irish identity or Irishness, usually always from the perspective of women's identity also. So I never had the opportunity till this very moment to study this relationship between myths and science fiction. So this was a sort of a challenge, and I do think that after having access to these two plays, I could, or I was able to establish this relationship between myth and imagined modernity in these two contemporary Irish plays, and then as another attempt basically to represent modern identities, in this case Irish identities. So I would like to start by making this brief reference to the way in which myth has been present in Irish theatre in many different ways and with many different intentions. In the pictures that you have in the slide, you can see the reference to the Daughters of Ireland on your right, who used in their representations of scenes the Irish myths mainly at the beginning of the 20th century, with two main intentions, both as a means of promoting Irish culture, but also to promote women's political involvement and activism. And in their performances, they included these mythic Irish characters, such as, for instance, Queen Maeve or Grania. And then, of course, we have Jades. The picture that you have on your left is from Kathleen Ní Houlihan by Jades. Jades is, of course, very well known for his use of the Irish myths, also related to his intention to recreate the values of the heroes and heroines at different moments of social and political upheaval in Ireland. And he used the myths, for instance, of Kathleen Ní Houlihan or Deirdre in the Ulster Theatre at the beginning of the 20th century to identify Irish women with nationalism and to contribute then to the construction of another myth, which is the myth of Mother Ireland. And finally, I included there a third picture, which belongs to one of the plays by Marina Carr, one of the most important contemporary Irish playwrights, who is internationally acknowledged and also considered a classicist, precisely because she rewrites these Greek classical myths in many of her plays. The image that you have there belongs to By the Book of Cats, which is a revision of the myth of Medea, but she has just written, for instance, Phaedra backwards, in which she revisits the myth of Phaedra in order to rewrite the identity of the Irish woman. So within this process of redefining and representing identities, we can start talking about the two plays that I have selected for today. And I would like to start by saying that this reimagining of Ireland and Irish identity in recent years can be linked both to the idea of globalization and both to the countries, I mean Ireland's embrace of the European integration. And this appears in theatre in different ways. And we can also say that there has been a shift in the depiction of Irishness linked to this search of a new identity and this sort of attempt to represent how theatre now escapes naturalism and how the characteristic themes that we could find so far in Irish theatre have become or are looking for new spaces which do not have to have necessarily this relationship with the reality. And within the scope of these new realities that we mentioned today, also in our previous talk, the world of science and modernity is chosen as a possible setting for Irish contemporary theatre. And when I first saw an image of the representation of the first play that I will like to comment on today, which is Angel Babel, that is the image that you can see there, I thought that this play, according to the research that I have done so far, I thought that this play could be a denounce of the overuse of the women's body and identity to represent Ireland, to represent others' identities, to represent other identities. And I do consider, after having had access to the full performance and having talked to the writer and actress, Olwen Fury, that this is one of the possible readings that we can comment on today. These are some images from the play, okay? And Angel Babel was born out of the collaboration between Fury and Irish composer Roger Doyle. They first created this very important theatre company in Ireland, the Operating Theatre, and this was caused or fostered by Olwen Fouéry's position in resistance to the, and I'm quoting Fouéry's here, in resistance to the inherent traditions of a predominantly literary Irish theatre, she said, end of quote. So for her, this World Wide Web that is represented in the play can be interpreted as a nervous system with information crisscrossing at an ever accelerating rate. So what she does is imagining that accelerating process and try to represent its result. And she imagines this creation of matter in the form of the emergence of a being, which is Angel Babel, okay, which is a body, the body that you can see in all those scenes, made of light. That's why the reference to angel, okay, whose veins and arteries stretched across time and space. And these again are words from Fouéry, when she explained to me what she was trying to do. So Angel Babel explores this vast interconnecting message system around which a subtle body begins to form. Other themes that are present in the play through the messages delivered by this creature, okay, the play is basically the emergence or the birth of this creature who appears on a stage like attached to many cables and who utter some mechanical messages, okay. So she makes mention to for instance, fallen angels, for instance, Shemsaya, which is the fallen angel from the Abrahamic tradition. And his lover is Tahar. She also makes reference to global cataclysms in the form of rain fallen for weeks in huge proportions, and references to the stars, to the heliacal rising of Sirius, to the Orion constellation, and to the axis mundi as the symbol of present in different cultures, to represent the connection between earth and heaven. And the knowledge of ancient civilizations, there are references to Etemenanki, which is the temple of creation of the earth. And she also sometimes uses ancient languages, for instance, Old Irish from the Christian Druids. So all these ideas, as I said before, are expressed through a mechanical language, which is mattered by this creature, who can be said or understood as imbued in this process of birth. And thus, Angel Babel can first be interpreted as a journey into the mythological netherworld, a starry otherworld, this strange physical domain with narrow passageways and dark subterranean chambers. But there is also that second reading that I mentioned before. It can also be understood in terms of the ideas that Olwen Fouéry has about his own performance or work as an actress. This work as an actress, this performance style has been acknowledged, and I quote, as a distinctive and vigorous physical performance style, which underscores the way in which limiting myths of femininity are inscribed on and resisted by the embodied experience of women. So if we take into account the examples of the uses of myths that we saw at the very beginning by Yates and the Daughters of Ireland, and how they constructed this myth of Mother Ireland, and we take into account the ideas of some scholars, such as, for instance, Hill, who stated that, and I quote, women's bodies bear the consequences of the imposition of the myths of femininity, we could conclude saying that Fouéry is the author who uses the female body as the primary text, I'm just checking the time, in order to uncover this inscription of bodies. Thus, the use of her body to represent this birth of a technological female being who is made of ancient strata and related to ancient knowledge, and who creates a language of her own, deconstructs that embodied myth-making traditionally attached to women in Irish theatre before the modern times. And the images of the play and its sounds and its music escape traditional literary depictions of women and traditional, of course, theatrical spaces used in Ireland so far, or theatrical settings, and encourage instead modernity and hybridity, leaving aside iconic representations of women as Mother Ireland. That image that we saw at the beginning, and also the images that you have there of the actress attached to all those cables, and also to her body, represent for a reader of Irish theatre and myths, or call for a possible denounce of that overuse of the women's body as a site of representation. And if we had in Angel Babel this journey into the darkness, we also, on these new settings and this importance or relevance of modernity and science, we do also have that in the second play that I selected in order to describe this relationship between myth and science fiction in contemporary theatre. That is Melt. We also have an alien creature here, and we also have an alien creature who is born on a stage. Melt is also part of this new emerging theatre that exists in Ireland, a theatre that has been defined as going beyond its established boundaries. And in Melt, the Irish characters are abroad, but they do not, or they are not exiles, or they are not part of the diaspora. The Irish emigration is reworked, and the experiences told or related are or do have this relationship with a new reality with science, where science plays this very important role. The play was written in this case for the Rough Magic Theatre Company, which is very well known in Ireland for its concern to reinforce the relationship between the local and the global, representing themes of international concern. And from this perspective, the playwright, Shane McAmbert, has been described as planetary in scope. Melt is a play in which the rules of science and the conventions of theatre go head to head with a plot that can be said to define both aspects. It was directed by Lynn Parker and first premiered in the Dublin Theatre Festival of 2017. And the characters that we have here are two scientists, Boylan and Cook. Boylan is a well-experienced investigator in ecology, and Cook is a younger researcher. And then we have Viva, who is the creature that they find during this journey that they also start. The play takes place in a lab in Antarctica, where both of them do their research and live. And on one side of the stage, they have this huge hole which has been drilled into the ice cap, and which symbolizes the entrance into the unknown again. So Boylan represents that same need that we saw in Angel Babel to descend into the darkness of the beginning of times. Again, he's all the time trying to find the answers. And also criticism on machines, okay, which according to him, and I quote, make people imprisoned in blips and beeps, impotent. And he says, I have to go down. We are going to get back to the heart of things. His description of the whole of the ice as a personification of the dying earth is imbued in a process of breakup. And he says, the earth is forgetting itself, wiping the slate clean. What Boylan finds when he enters that hole are piles of ice that he again personifies. He says they are veins and seams in the flesh of ice, an enormous cavity made of tall pillars of ice, like long bones, skeleton limbs reaching far, far up, disappearing into the darkness again. So he feels this Icarus-like attraction to enter further and further, and he finds what seems the greatest scientific ever, which is Viva, the creature, the alien creature. So from this moment onwards, the audience or the reader in this case hesitates. Are we in presence of a sort of a hallucination, or is this a reality? The creature that has been found becomes an object of scientific analysis, and she starts to imitate human behavior as did the creature performed by Fury, and its evolution is parallel to Boyle and Cook's degeneration on the other hand. Both of them, both scientists, end up damaged, defeated characters who can be said to represent the folly of humankind. Icarus, like men, again, who live in the edge of the unknown, one of the latest unspoiled spaces, the Antarctica, and who dared to alter it. And it can be considered as an allegory of how scientific contamination inflicted on these idyllic landscapes is rejected by the Earth itself. So to conclude, I would like to go back to the title and to suggest that myth and science fiction are present in contemporary Irish theatre in plays such as Angel, Babel, or Melt, which in a way share this reconstruction of Irishness, the Irish identity, which still contain traces of mythological meanings. We have made reference to the myth of Mother Island, or the ancient myths, the Icarus-like scientist, but this time in a context of a new reality, a context of an imagined modernity. Thank you very much. And I think I did the 20 minutes.
Thank you very much, Maria del Mar, for a very interesting and clear talk, very enlightening. I was not actually familiar with either of these plays, and
me neither.
Well, I was going to ask you while waiting for like some questions that I mean, in the case of the first one, I wasn't even sure. It sounds to me sort of like a mixture of a performance and a play. It is, yeah?
Yes. As I told you before, this actress, Olwen Forrest, has this very well acknowledged in Ireland because of the types of performances she does. And in the case when she sent me the video of the play, as you said, it is a performance. There is a lot of music, and all you have on the stage is Fury, her body, okay, and attached to all these cables, and the way in which she tries to talk, and the way that she tries to move, and the way all the references to mythological characters are used by her in order to perform this play.
So she's a kind of hybrid Frankenstein.
Yes.
Artificial intelligent robot.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. It's like a robot, like a machine being born.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have any questions here? Let's see. Christina. Thank you, Christina. Can you see her question? Would you like me to read it to you?
Shall I go to the chat, I suppose?
I'll read it to you if you like me.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine, because I cannot see the chat right now.
It says, I know there's a very strong tradition in Irish letters adapting myth, Greek or Irish, and it seems to be going strong. What do you think is there in Irish culture that draws authors towards myth-inflected expression? Very interesting question.
Can you repeat the question, Lorraine?
Yes, I know there's a very strong tradition in Irish letters adapting myth, Greek or Irish, and it seems to be going strong. What do you think is there in Irish culture that draws authors towards myth-inflected expression?
I completely agree. All my research so far has been related to the rewriting of myths, okay? First of all, I worked in the place of Marina Carr, but that was the departure. And from that, I had the opportunity to see how so many different contemporary playwrights have turned to Irish mythology. And in the interviews that I had the opportunity to do to some of these playwrights, their intention is basically to use this Greek mythology in order to rewrite the Irish identity. They use the myth as or in order to unmask or to rewrite stereotypical identities attached to iris or irisness. Okay, especially women. Okay, women's identity. Okay, it is very common that they use Greek myths or classical myths such as the myth of Medea or Phaedra or Hecuba. For instance, Marina Carr has also a very nice version of Hecuba. Frank McGuinness has also a very interesting rewriting of Hecuba. My last article was about that, about those two plays. And both of them agree on their vision of the use of myth in order to rewrite identities. They rewrite the myths, and by doing that, by placing the myths, in Ireland, both in the Republic and also in Northern Ireland, okay, and that is also a very interesting approach to this research. They try to do that, to rewrite the identity, what identities, the different identities of the characters. And sometimes you find just revisions, but other times adaptations, and other times completely new plays, rewritings that are completely new. And it's very interesting to see what is behind each of the rewritings.
It's also interesting because I'm thinking that plays or the theatre, we don't often think of the theatre as being a place where science fiction and myth can converge, or perhaps now we're so used to films, video games, comics that we tend to automatically look there. And I think it's very interesting, very original as well. And
for me, it was, as I told you before, it was completely new. In fact, when I saw the call for this conference, because I usually attend this conference, and I thought, well, this year I'm not going to be able to find the connections. It was difficult for me to think within the context of Irish contemporary theatre, okay? And when I started talking to some colleagues in Ireland, and they told me, have you seen this, or have you read this? And I said, okay, there is a relationship, there is a connection, which is, as I told you before, very interesting. But it is also interesting to know that both these two plays, have not been published. Melt has just been published, okay, but Angel Babel has not been published, okay, which I wonder why, okay, because I think it's very, very interesting, okay.
The case of Melt, it reminded me, and it probably has nothing to do with it, but it reminded me there's a science fiction film by John Carpenter called The Thing, which takes place in the Antarctic. Do you know the film?
Yes, I know.
And when you were actually describing the plot, it reminded me of this film.
Yes, yes.
I don't think storylines converge, but it did remind me of that.
In fact, when I think it was very interesting to read the play and then to see, because in this case I did not have the opportunity to see the performance, okay, as I did have in Melt. But when you read the play, you do not imagine Viva. If you remember the images of Viva, this is Viva, okay? And when you read the play, I was thinking of a creature like the one that you are describing, okay? Yeah. And then I found this. Okay, so my next question to the playwright is going to be related to that. Why did you choose this woman to represent the creature? Because a creature which is found down in the eyes, okay, is expected to have a different shape, okay? But I have to say that yesterday, I didn't include it here because I thought it was too late, but yesterday I received this email from the author, and he told me, Mar, consider also the relationship between the play, between Melt and Prometheus. The myth of Prometheus, which would also, yes, okay, would also be very, very interesting, and also related to what you have just said, okay, that use of the science or that excessive use of it.
Okay, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add, or any of the other speakers? No?
Yes, I have a question for Mar, if possible.
Yes, Diana, I can hear you.
Yeah, I was very much interested in the topic of your talk. I'm not an expert in Irish literature, but I'm actually interested in the representation of science in literature.
All right.
And also in eco-criticism.
Okay.
So I have this impression that Ireland is often described as the Emerald Island, and Mother Ireland is like very much identified with Mother Earth in a way. And here you're offering an analysis of two plays that seem to be discussing what kind of modernity Ireland is up for, is ready for. And it seems to me that both plays offer a very critical vision of science. Okay, can you establish a relationship between that critical vision of science and the making of science, or the doing of the making of science, and whether or not in that imagined modernity authors are possibly suggesting a return to maybe a more traditional Ireland, an Ireland that is more connected to its roots, and these roots being
Yes.
part of a more environmentally aware type of Ireland, or not?
I think so, Diana. I think that relationship can be established. In fact, in the first play, in Angel Babel, Angel Babel, the main character, the woman, talks about the ancient Druids, okay, and there is a reference, I didn't include it here, but there is a reference to the landscapes where they lived, okay. And in the second play, in Melt, of course, there is also a criticism. I mean, both researchers are researchers in ecology, okay, and as I said, I do think that they believe or denounce, okay, what we are doing to Earth, okay. I have here the words of one of the authors, which I'm going to read because I think they are related to what you said. Shane, when I asked him about the use of the myth of Icarus, he said, "I find this face fascinating, Mar, and it expresses something essential about the bind of being alive. Daedalus creates this sensible, effective technology in synchrony with the forces of nature, elegant, freeing. The winds are an excellent and effective solution to their incarceration. But then he makes this fatal error of thinking that he can go on to regulate the use of the invention, telling Icarus not to fly too high or too low. What bureaucratic imbecility from an otherwise capable person. But this usually happens in Ireland, where people seems to be more and more concerned about ecology, but doing nothing to put it into practice." Okay, so I think
Yeah, that's a very interesting quote.
yes, okay, and his ideas are very much related to this, okay. And I think I never worked into eco-criticism, but I think it would be very interesting to analyze this place from that perspective, okay, because there are many references to ecology in Melt, okay. I focused on the ones that were interesting for the purpose of this conference, but there are many references.
Mar, there's another question in the chat. Perhaps you could give us a quick answer to it before we move on. It's from Eva Gilderim, and she says, can you read it, or would you like me to read it?
I'm afraid I don't have access to the chat right now. Lorraine, okay, I cannot see the chat.
Congratulations. I was really fascinated by your reading of Melt as a postmodern retelling of Icarus, but would you read the whole as a kind of labyrinth which he has to explore in order to reach a better understanding of the notion of identity? And in this sense, could the creature be seen as a minotaur?
All right. Okay, very interesting. Okay, so we go to Phaedra. We go back to the myth of Phaedra. Yes, maybe it could be understood in that sense too. Okay, that would be part of another analysis. As I told you, this is my first encounter with these two plays, and as I said before, I think it is a pity that Angel Babel is not published, and Melt has not received critical attention yet. So I think they should be acknowledged, okay, as examples of a new irisness, okay, which is trying to be depicted in theater, okay. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you very much, Mar. I think we should move on then to our next speaker. So
I stop sharing the screen, yes?
Yeah, you have to stop sharing the screen, and then that way I can introduce the next speaker.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So our next speaker today is Milan Tomasevic. I hope I pronounced that right. If not, please correct me. And Milan holds a PhD in anthropology and works at the Serbian Academy of Science and Arts. And at present, he's involved in the study of anthropology of science, contemporary forms of religiosity, popular culture, and mythology. And today he's going to be talking to us about semiotics of popular cosmological narrative. So Milan, over to you.
Thank you. Just a second to share the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay?
Great. Yes, we can see. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank the committee for effort that has done during the past few months on organizing the conference, because COVID threw us all. I hope that we'll be in an opportunity to see each other in Madrid next year. So I will read it. It's quite easier for me. So if I'm annoying, so interrupt me, please. Today I intend to give a presentation of research I've been doing as a part of my dissertation. Actually, it consisted of reading a lot of hermetic books and continuous watching of various a bit confusing documentaries and interviews dealing with the physics, astronomy, and cosmology. The main object of research was the text of authors such as Stephen Weinberg, Stephen Hawking, Carl Sagan, Martin Rees, Alan Guth, Andre Linde, Alexei Vilenkin, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lawrence Krauss, Michio Kaku, Brian Greene, and a number of other scientists who have significant presence in popular culture in general. Those are the, I don't know, most known popularizers of cosmology today. I guess everybody knows them. At least Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Television series with a broad public attention, such as Cosmos, how universe works, or To the Wormhole, broadcast on the channels such as National Geographic, Discovery, or Science, are of seminal importance in forming a public education discourse. My thesis was that these series and the images within them are far more significant, have a far more significant role in forming a specific worldview and defining a value system actually more than you can imagine or assume at the first glance. In essence, my intention was to analyze modern cosmology with a means developed for the interpretation of myth and other folk narratives. Main assumption was that popular cosmological text contains basic narrative elements and that it is possible to read culturally relevant messages from. The idea is that popular science provides an ideological framework for its viewers and readers. People inscribe their own value system into the framework and then build ideas about their own identities around it. They are mostly secular, atheistic, and humanistically orientated, but they don't necessarily have to be that way. Modern science opens space for a variety of interpretations that combine ideas from systems such as quantum mechanics, philosophy of life, religion, and pseudoscience. I'm sure that it is quite clear that such a bricolage represents an extremely fertile ground for anthropological and folkloristic research. Every cosmology, together with its own cosmogony, explains the origin and true states of man and his position in the world. It's quite likely that there is no culture on the planet that doesn't have a sacred story that explains where humanity came from in a given place at a given time. Modern cosmology provides an explanation of why life developed on Earth and how it's possible that we live our own experience as we do. Modern cosmology, as well as conventional mythic narratives, offers contemporary orientation in space and time, She explains where he came from, how he developed, and what his future is like. In order for any analysis of modern cosmology as a text to be possible, it is necessary to synthesize analytically fruitful narrative. There are a few generic pictures. The Big Bang as a picture of the beginning of the evolution of the universe, an Ikea as a representation of vastness of our local part of the cosmos, and the Big Rip as the idea of the distant future. Gives us an overview of the importance of adequate understanding of modern cosmology. It is important to understand the role of the story in describing the autochthony of a man on a planet Earth as a self-sown being who is lucky, under quotes, to live in a period when his observations are possible. Although it sounds essentialistic, I am convinced that we all have a need for orientation and a clear picture of our place in the world. Seemingly simple insight in a simple need shows us an extremely complex set of solutions and ideas that we as a species came up with. The context in which cosmology has a special value is represented by culture wars. That is the continuous struggle of the secular and religious worldviews which defines Judeo-Christian world of the West. Since the establishment of modern science in the 16th and 17th centuries, the Christian image of the cosmos has significantly changed. Biblical cosmogony was abounded and different conceptions were created, of course. However, philosophical and theological issues are still at the center of various debates. Working on the thesis, I realized that science constantly provides theologians with excellent material for reflections, and that is a game that will never stop. On the other hand, science offers additional space for philosophers to question the meaning and value of life on Earth in a different ways than positivistic science usually does. Much more precisely, the cultural context in which cosmology appears as a philosophical text is the relationship between creationism and intelligent design to science from the 20th and 21st century, primarily to the theory of evolution, biology, genetics, and at the end of the cosmology. In the context of relationship between science and religion, or philosophy and theology, cosmology has a function of secular myth that explains the conditions for the formation of life and explains the emergence of civilization on Earth. A good way to present the cosmological narrative as a myth is to view the history of cosmology as a history of scientific tribe, under quotes of course, or a community of people who share similar cultural heritage. In this context, we get mythical ancestors, founding fathers, creators of dominant theories, as well as the bearers of modern discourse. These are the philosophers, scientists, and authors who created the image of the universe that we all have today. The narrative was formed throughout the history of humankind, of course, from the age of the first humans in search of the best possible prey, through early civilization to modern science and the most contemporary reason. So, in order to analyze cosmological narrative as a myth, I had to present it as such a story and then rely on analytical tools created for their analysis. Of crucial importance was the ideas of Algerdas Greimas, actential scheme and transformational model allowed me to dissect the cosmological narrative. Semiotic square allowed me to search for its meaning that can be understood in the context of cultural wars of the conflict of scientific and religious ideas of the cosmos. Also, the ideas of Prop and Tudorov and their postulates on state of equilibrium and definition of narrative sequences enable the transformation of cosmological narrative into a series of episodes that can be interpreted as parts of great adventure, which led to the final triumph of hero. The basic idea was to find elements of Greimas' actential scheme in the narrative, that is, episode of his transformational model. First of all, I synthesized story from different media. After that, I divided narrative into episodes mini segments describe key processes and turning points in the evolution of the universe, and then look for actants in their vicinity. The transformation model defined the key episodes of the narrative, and the attentional scheme crystallized the characters. The cosmological scenario has several basic episodes that are found in the text and the depictions of the evolution of the universe. So those are the episodes that I will tell you later. In every book I've read, there are these 7 or 8, I don't know, themes that I interpreted and as episodes. Okay. So Planck's era describes a quantum vacuum and events before the Big Bang itself. A bang without the bang is a part of the story that describes the appearance of time and space and explains that the burst couldn't get the way we usually imagine. The explosion didn't have where, under quotes, and when, also under quotes, to happen. After that, a very important sequence is inflation, as the description of process of space-time expansion at a speed greater than the speed of light. That episode explains how it's possible that the universe is so big and flat as it is. The episode Baryogenesis, Annihilation, and Nucleosynthesis tell the story of the formation of matter and energy, which will eventually lead to the creation of conditions in the universe as we see today. The creation of large structures always deals with the description of black holes, galaxies, stars, and the formation of various celestial bodies. Similarly, the formation of solar system, the Earth, the planets in our immediate neighborhood, abiogenesis and the appearance of man stand mostly at the very end of the narrative as confirmation of the universe's intention, under quotes, to create an intelligent observer. On top of all that, cosmological narrative has its own eschatological dimension, with the episodes dealing with the ideas about the end of the known cosmos. Furthermore, the narrative always sets aside space for the idea of the multiverse, as a concept derived from the fusion of string theory and inflationary cosmology. It refers to a possibility that the cosmos is so large that it is necessary to view it as a group of countless local universes, special arrangements of space-time. As already stated, a focal point of the narrative is formation of life that is capable of observing its own origin. It's clear that it's clearly anthropocentric image and it stands at the center of interpretation of modern cosmology as a secular myth. Such an interpretation of the intention of the cosmos is in tight relationship with the anthropic principle. It is the idea that all events in the history of the universe were such that they inevitably had to lead to the appearance of man capable of contemplating his own evolution. Today, it's not the opportunity to reconsider such a position, as it would lead us to the irreversible excurse, but it should be underlined that it's a very common attitude shared with people of the sharpest critical position, with the people who are completely fascinated and almost blinded by greatness of civilization. Also, it's a position often used by theologians to demonstrate the of God interference in history. So the question is why I chose life and reason as subject and object of the narrative and cosmos as the sender. In the books, as I mentioned earlier, in the books, but above all in the serial Cosmos, presented by Carl Sagan and then Neil deGrasse Tyson, the narrative is set so that man, as a reasonable being, managed to penetrate into the secret of the evolution of the universe, and this enables the cosmos to self-understand. It is discourse of Sagan and Tyson. In the discourse of Sagan and Tyson, there is an idea that the cosmos, throughout human intelligence, showed all its own splendor. Of course, such an anthropocentric view of the universe has no complete foundation, and it's far from the truth, or from any truth, but is relevant until we came into contact with some extraterrestrial culture that will deconstruct our selfish perspective. The transformation model, enriched by the ideas of Propp and Todorov, described the epic of development of life from the initial state of unshaken equilibrium of quantum atoms. After he is disturbed, the adventure of a hero who has yet to appear begins. First, it exists only as a potential in a multitude of possibilities of the early universe. Over time, more and more necessary conditions for the appearance of life, man, and reason were created. The laws of nature appear as an enemy throughout the use of anthropic principle, namely, through the narrative, all key episodes are always explained as extremely risky and dangerous, as moments and results could have gone in a completely different course. Time is defined as a helper because you have to give a chance to life, or time itself to develop. The story of evolution of the cosmos can be represented by a semiotic square. Moreover, semiotic square opens up the possibility for numerous interpretations of the hidden meanings, especially when enriched by the square of truth. In addition, when the squares of scenes or sense contained in the text are merged, it is possible to create a representation of conjoint semiotic square that reveal extremely interesting relationship between science and religion. Sense around which meaning of the narrative is built are of exceptional value in considering the understanding of the presence of life in space and assessment of uniqueness of life on Earth. In this context of estimates of number of existing alien civilizations, the cosmological narrative gained its own value in religious discourse. The idea of God as creator, creation out of nothing, but also of the human soul as a completely unique, come into remuneration and are the subject of public debates between the theologians and philosophers such as William Lane Craig and Quentin Smith. The themes that are in the narrative itself refer to the possibility of appearance of life and its significance for the self-observation of the universe. In this context, the idea of emptiness, multiverse, local universe, or frequent occurrence of life have a value as an expression of re-examining of self-song of a man and the necessity for a rational being to be formed. On the other hand, the relationship between the anthropic principle and intelligent design, evolution, and fine-tuning has value in the direct conflict of theology and philosophy. It's quite clear that the analyzed themes are to some extent arbitrary and depend on the context in which we have placed the narrative. I accept any criticism that goes in that direction, but also invite colleagues to conduct their own analysis and offer their own conclusions. Finally, I hope that exposition was not too confusing and that I have managed to convey the depth of significance that modern cosmology has in a wider cultural context. What is certain is that the narrative is very likely to change and grow more complex in the future as theories develop, as well as the observational apparatus gets more precise. It is certain that different interested parties will interpret and reconsider most mystical elements of the cosmological conception, and then we will see some really creative minds in action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milan. I'm going to ask you to exit the presentation, and that way we can come back together. Thank you. I confess being completely ignorant in cosmology. So I have learned something, I think. Let's see, for a question for you. I don't know if we have any questions yet on the chat, but maybe you could explain how science fiction and myth deal with cosmology, the cosmology of the universe.
Mm-hmm. Well,
expand on that.
For first moment, there is Interstellar. And when you look at the Interstellar as a narrative or a great film, you have to know that Kip Thorne was the main advisor of Brothers Nolan. I
was actually thinking of Interstellar, yeah, when I heard your talk.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that I don't know. There is a tight relationship between myth and science fiction because there is a freedom of thought in science fiction that is similar, like the possibilities of interpretation of myth. And I find it really, really exciting, and that is the biggest connection for me.
Okay, thank you. There's a question in the chat here from Medka. Thank you, Medka. She says, if I understand you correctly, all discourse about the universe may be somewhat considered as science fiction, combined with myths. Basically, can humans think beyond myths?
It's interesting. I don't know. It's tricky to say that every I don't know, discourse about the universe is science fiction, but it gives you freedom to I don't know, push the limits more upfront, because idea of the multiverse, Matt is right, because idea of the multiverse is probably something that we will never get to confirm. So I don't know. When you see Levi Strauss and authors like that, they tell you that I don't know, everything is under mythical thoughts and understanding. So if you would like that, you can say that every thinking about the universe have some folkloristic base and mythical structure. That was I don't know, I guess the one of the theses of the dissertation.
Mm-hmm. Apart from Interstellar, you mentioned Interstellar. I'm guessing that you dealt with this in your thesis, in your work. Are there any other films or books that you could mention that deal with this as well?
There is a Sagan's book and the film with Jodie Foster, Contact. It's a sort of different discourse, but it's really good movie to watch. Mm-hmm. And it's I don't know, really culturally relevant text, if I may add.
Medka has just said Contact, the film. Yes. Contact. That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
There is a bunch of great movies, bunch of great I don't know, series, but it's all I'm always about that freedom of thought. It gives you opportunity to use relevant science in a really creative way, and that is something that you can find something where you can find a real joy.
Okay, thank you, Milan. Are there any more questions from anybody? Would any of the other speakers like to ask anything or mention anything?
Yeah, May I?
Of course.
Yeah, I was thinking about another film, Arrivals. I'm not sure you are aware of that one.
Yes, of course.
Which is really interesting. When I watched that film, I thought about analyzing it from an ecofeminist perspective, because that's what I do, basically. But also, after listening to your talk, I think you could also explore the possibility of, reading this film from, using the type of work you are doing, because it actually, in this film, the idea you get at the end is that we really need to go away from the type of cosmology we use and replace it by a very different one. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with the film, if you remember.
Yes, I watched it a few times. It's a great movie. And you're right, it offers a different perspective, with the circle and the way of, how to say, way of talking. It reminds us to wait for another perspective. That is, I don't know, big hope in some contact with the extraterrestrial culture, because you have to shake your anthropocentric perspective, and I don't know, it could be a good dialogue if they don't erase it.
And it also brings up the topic of time and how we move in time. So I think it's a very interesting film.
Yes, that is that freedom, exactly. It gives you a space to put all different, I don't know, narratives in a bigger picture. So you have a time dilatation story, you have a semiotics or context story. It's a great movie, and that's a great platform for future.
Okay, well, thank you very much again for all your questions and for the dialogue that we've created. So we'll move on then to the last but not least, to our last speaker today. I'll just close the chat here. Okay, so last but not least, we have Diana Villanueva Romero, who is an associate professor, profesor contratado doctor at the University of Extremadura in Cáceres, Spain. And she holds a PhD in American Studies from the University of Alcalá. Her scholarship and research in American Studies also combines with her interest in eco-criticism and zoo criticism. And these bios are very short. I've just realized, because Diana has a lot more than that's just here in her little bio. But anyway, I will pass you over to Diana to speak to us today about hybrid heroines in American ape fiction. So Diana, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. You can share your presentation when you like. And you need to unmute your mic so we can hear you.
Okay, here we go. It's my first online presentation, so let's see how it works. Well, thank you, Lorraine, for your kind words. And I would also like to thank all the organizers, José Manuel, Antonella, Adrián, and the long list of collaborators they may have for putting together this wonderful conference. I have attended this conference in the past, and it's really, really sad that we cannot get together in Madrid, but it's great to meet online. So thank you very much. Well, I'll try to combine sort of my reading of my paper with a little bit more of a freedom type of presentation. Let's see how it goes. Ape fiction is an established genre of American literature. Its development can be traced back to the turn of the 20th century. And one of its recurrent themes, human-ape hybridization, revolves around the phylogenetic closeness between human and non-human apes, as well as today's scientific prowess, and often leads into ontological questions about human nature. In the last decades, this genre has experienced a feminization both in terms of the authors behind the stories and their protagonists. Thus, the aim of this paper is to analyze the role of the protagonist of Lawrence Gonzalez's novel, Lucy, in relationship with two female myths, the origin myth of Eve and the empowering myth of the Amazons, which, as it will be argued in this paper, are used with the purpose of advocating the need of a transition into a more sustainable world. First, this paper will analyze the literary use of hybrids in ape fiction. Second, attention will be paid to the connections between myth criticism and eco-criticism. And finally, I will refer to how examples of female ape-human hybrids allow for the ecological use of the myths of Eve and the Amazons through the transformation of the novel's protagonist into a spokesperson for the more than human world. Ape fiction in English can be classified according to three main topics. Animal experimentation, the first one, which can be organized around four sub-themes: raising a baby chimpanzee alongside a human baby, ape language experiments, animal testing in laboratories, often having to do with bioengineered bodies or xenotransplantation, that is, animal to human organ transplant, and ape-human miscegenation, which has human-ape hybrids as protagonists of the narration. The second topic is that of animal activism, which often involves animal rescue. And finally, the theme of field primatology, which normally has female primatologists as main characters. For the purpose of this paper, I will concentrate on speculative fiction focused on examples of ape-human miscegenation. According to Aline Ferreira, the 1980s is an especially rich period in terms of ape-human hybrid fantasies. She mainly circumscribes this to literary and film examples produced in the English-speaking world. Many among them have been produced in the United States, although not exclusively. They often prompt a reflection on reproduction, the ethics of science, and humanity's decisive role in the current ecological crisis. Some of the examples mentioned by Ferreira are Maureen Duffy's novel Gore Saga, Pat Murphy's Rachel in Love, Nancy Kress's Maximum Light, and Carrie Thompson's cousin's short story Confessions of a Bioterrorist, Subject Position and Reproductive Technologies. Such a weird title. In my own updated bibliography of 21st century ape fiction, I have found out at least 3 works that revolve around hybridity. The 3 of them have been written by American authors and pay special attention to the female experience. These are Brenda Peterson's Animal Heart, you see it at the bottom of the list, Kelpie Wilson's Primal Tears, and Lawrence Gonzalez's Lucy. And sorry for the tiny letter, but that was the only way in which I could fit the whole table into the slide. Lucy's protagonist is an orphan by the same name who is rescued by primatologist Jenny Lowe while on assignment in Congo. After a terrorist attack on a colleague's camp, Dr. Stones, that leaves it totally destroyed, Dr. Lowe finds the only survivor, teenage girl Lucy. Soon, she will discover the special qualities of this intriguing girl she finally decides to adopt, as well as her mysterious origin. Lucy is the result of an experiment orchestrated by Dr. Stone in an attempt to create a being where the best of Homo sapiens and that of Pan Paniscus are blended in an extraordinary creature able to communicate with the rest of nature and committed to its defense. As we can see at the center of this story, there is a human-ape hybrid. Hybrids have been part of Western culture since antiquity. In Seres Híbridos, en la mitología griega, Alberto Bernabé y Jorge Pérez de Tudela offer an exploration of the meaning of hybrid creatures such as the Sphinx, the Sirens, the Medusa, the Gorgons, the Centaurs. In their book, they insist in the liminality of hybrids, creatures that suggest spaces of transition between 2 natures, between 2 worlds, life and death, for example, since often they were in charge of welcoming the dead into the afterlife. In recent years, theories such as Donna Haraway and Bruno Latour have also paid attention to hybrids through their work on the cyborg and on nature cultures, respectively. Equally interesting is the work of Anna Zinn and her development of the concept of friction as a zone of awkward engagements, the result of cultural processes she sees as interactions and that she calls friction, that is, the awkward, unequal, unstable, and creative qualities of interconnections across difference. I think all these ideas are especially meaningful to understand the significance of literary hybrids such as Lucy to motivate an understanding of human nature in relationship with the more than human world and hence facilitate a shift towards a more sustainable way of living. Indeed, the work I analyze here is an example of a speculative fiction where 2 myths of female empowerment are used with an environmental aim. In his introductory work on myth, Lawrence Cook, quoting Ricoeur, highlights the potential of myth to liberate us from reality and imaginatively project us towards alternatives to the existing world. And I quote, myth may imply a hierarchy, but it also implies a horizon. It is a disclosure of unprecedented worlds, an opening onto other possible worlds, which transcend the established limits of our actual world. In other words, while myth may be paradigmatic and while it may imply a social and cosmic order or perfection, it also carries with it a promise of another mode of existence entirely, to be realized just beyond the present time and place. It is not only foundational, as in fertility and creation narratives, but also liberating, as in deliverance and in many heroic and literary narratives, end quote. I would add that this power to suggest or evoke new realities is precisely what we need if we want to revert the effects of the Anthropocene. In their introduction to the special issue of Ecozone, the European Journal of Literature, Culture and Environment, Imelda Martín Junquera and Francisco Molina Moreno pay tribute to the unique relationship between myth and environmentally aware literature by saying that, and I quote, myths and the literature of nature have been written in acknowledgement and understanding of each other, end quote. I believe this theoretical entanglement is highly present in Gonzalez's novel, where the main protagonist, a female ape-human heroine, actualizes two myths of female empowerment, the biblical Eve and the Amazons, by turning them into the embodiment of an avenging nature that facilitates its own salvation by means of a bio-object, Lucy, with the possibility of reproducing and thus giving way to a new hybrid race that will end up replacing Homo sapiens. In Earth Care, Women and the Environment, Caroline Merchant explores the many aspects of the association of women with nature in Western culture. More specifically, she focuses her attention on female symbols of nature, Gaia from the Greek tradition, Eve from the Christian religion, and Isis from Egyptian history. Regarding Eve, she explains that it is a female symbol with a variety of potential implications for the environment, and I'm quoting her. As virgin, Eve represents pristine, untouched nature. As fallen Eve, she symbolizes a barren desert wanting improvement. As mother, she implies a planted garden, an improved land, a ripened, fruitful world. In the novel, Lucy can be identified with these three visions of the environmental Eve. She is virgin, fallen Eve, and planted garden. The associations to a first woman, a mother of all living creatures, are made evident in the name of the protagonist, Lucy, which can be associated with that of the first Australopithecus afarensis ever found, although, as her father explains, he chose it because of its meaning, light. And indeed, as he acknowledges, she has become the light of his world. Such role as beacon, as leader, is further stressed by her potential function as mother of a new race, the result of the crossing between Lucy, whose genes are partly human, partly bonobo, and her future partner, American Indian Stan Brings Plenty. This is what serves to attribute her the role of a new Eve. Lucy is aware of this after reading his father's notebooks, where he discloses the details of his project by saying, I examined the child thoroughly at birth and found her to be normal in every way and completely human in appearance. This proved one of the main points of my experiment, to wit, that humans can be moved into a more favorable spot in the evolutionary matrix, a position in which we may enjoy some of the superior qualities of our bonobo cousins. That gives me hope that by this means, a new race of people, more like the bonobo, but with human intelligence and language, therefore better suited to living in harmony with nature, can gradually evolve, beginning with this lineage, which I hereby bequeath to the future. After reading this, Lucy concludes, Papa's idea was that I would be the universal Eve for a new race of people. But as it often happens to those who are set in the path of becoming a hero, Lucy also finds moments of hardship where she can be identified with merchants' barren desert wanting improvement. This is especially clear the moment she understands she's not just a bonobo like the rest of her family. This epiphany comes with her acquisition of human language at a young age. At last, the words became thoughts, and a great gulf had opened between me and my siblings that could never be crossed again. My gift came with a terrible cost, for it closed me off from the ones I loved. Yet I had effected a magical transformation. I could put my thoughts into the man's brain by symbols alone, without speaking and without the stream. And by the way, the stream in the novel is a kind of communication channel that is shared by all living creatures. And of course, Lucy is part of that channel, okay? Another cost, language let humans forget the stream. And even as a small child, I was struck by both the magic and the sadness of that mysterious process. But the price of that gift was that I was cast out of Eden, out of the deep communion of my family. However, being aware of her mission will lead Lucy towards her final destination when she takes shelter, in an Indian reservation and becomes pregnant with her first child, a baby girl. Thanks to this, the story comes full circle as Lucy finally fulfills her destiny as mother of a new race. But her achievement has come at a cost. On the way, she has lost her friend and former lover, Amanda, who is killed by the Christian fundamentalist who had threatened to kill Lucy for being an aberration, a monster. It is under this pressure that Lucy evolves from the loving teenager Jenny, or Dr. Lowe, adopts to the fighting hybrid, and thus constitutes an expression of nature avenging itself against the forces represented by corporations, governments, and religious radicals that put it in peril. It is in this incarnation that I see a representation of environmental activism away from the traditional representation of animals as victims, a subject to which Marion Schollmeyer, as you can see in the slide, has paid close attention. For Lucy never surrenders and always fights back, both literally and figuratively, as when she, for example, decides to counterattack by openly disclosing her identity, her hybrid identity online. She goes on YouTube and uploads a video of herself declaring this, or when she defends her hybrid nature in front of the Board of Representatives who have to determine her legal treatment. And then she says, yes, I am human. As any legitimate scientist will tell you, a human is a type of ape. All people are closely related to the chimpanzee and pygmy chimpanzee, the bonobos, as they are now called. A few million years ago, there was a hominid called Australopithecus. Then later, there was Parathrompus and Homo habilis and Erectus and Ergaster. Those were all new types of humanoid apes or early people. I am born of Homo sapiens and Pampaniscus, two forms of ape. So I too, I'm a new type of human. And so I say, yes, I am human and I am ape. You are too, as is everyone in this room. Once, perhaps 100,000 or 200,000 years ago, your kind were new to this earth. I merely happen to be newer. I'm very proud of my heritage. Finally, I would like to finish my talk by leaving you with a final thought on the meaning of Gonzalez's novel in the context of today's world. Lucy can also be read as a recasting of the environmentalist story. In this respect, Noel Sturgeon, in her book Environmentalism in Popular Culture, speaks about the characteristics of this genre in the US and problematizes their effect by saying that the messages contained in these environmentalist stories are often counter to what environmental justice, ecofeminists, and global South environmentalist activists are fighting for. This is so because, according to her, in the environmentalist framework used in post-Cold War popular culture, the evil characters were always foreigners and anti-environmentalists. However, in Lucy, they are American, religious and political extremists, and it's true, and anti-environmentalists. Thus, nature's enemy is not outside, but inside American territory. This shows that the crisis affecting American culture today cannot be solved by finding enemies outside of its frontiers, but by reflecting on American identity in a profound manner in order to generate a new paradigm. Perhaps Lucy, with her willingness to embrace all beings, is an example of these much needed shifts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana, for such an interesting and clear talk. I really enjoyed it. There's already been lots and lots of questions on the chat while you were actually speaking, and people are saying really positive, interesting things. I don't know if you can read them, or would you like me to?
I have the chat here. I just need some time to digest the questions. Let's see. Just a thought for Diana. Lucy's name given to human Bigfoot. So I have it. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I haven't thought of that, but it's true that Lucy is a name given to the human Bigfoot. So yes, sure. Thanks for that comments. And also on the topic of women as nature, the whole Indian mythology stems from the dichotomy Purusa, spirit, considered as male, and Prakriti, matter, considered as feminine. Okay. I write that down. Thanks. Much. I would like to ask first whether you could please place the legend of Tarzan vis-a-vis Lucy, both in terms of ecology and of gender politics. Second, I would ask.
I don't know if everybody else can actually see the chat, so maybe we should read out the question.
Shall I read them myself, or you want to read them, Lorraine?
I don't mind. It's
okay. So there's a question in Christina Docus. She's poses the following comment and question. This was a fascinating presentation. Thank you very much. I would like to ask first whether you could please place the legend of Tarzan vis-a-vis Lucy, both in terms of ecology and of gender politics. Second, I would ask that you please comment on the irony that a nature-identified female had to be created in a lab by a male scientist. Isn't it he as a god that cast Lucy out of the Edenic communion with her family? Okay, I think I begin with the second question, sure. The way in which Dr. Stone, Lucy's father, because he actually uses his own sperm to impregnate the bioengineered bonobo, female bonobo that he uses. So he uses his sperm to generate Lucy, and throughout the novel there is a very ambiguous way of portraying Dr. Stone. He's both the mad represented as a kind of mad scientist, but at the same time he's also represented as a sort of God figure, someone who is trying to save the earth by creating Lucy. So he's both the good guy and the bad guy at the same time in the story. And of course, and Lucy has also very conflicted emotions towards his father. At some time, at the beginning of the story, of course, he has been killed by the terrorists who enter into his camp. So she really misses him. But then later on, when she discovers that she's a creation, she has been created by him, by Dr. Stone, she goes through a phase where she practically hates him. But I think she ends up reconciling herself with him, because by reading his logs, she realizes that his intentions were good, were positive. Okay, he just wanted to save the bonobos, and he also wanted to, in a way, save humans as well. And with regard to Tarzan, the truth is that I haven't thought about connecting Lucy with the legend of Tarzan. I guess that's basically because I have been so much focused on analyzing female ape-human hybrids in ape fiction in the past 2 months that I haven't thought about it. But I mean, if you have any thoughts on that, I would be more than pleased to hear those. But I'm sure there's a possible connection between the two of them. I don't know exactly what type of result that lead us into, but sure.
I was thinking as well, Diana, in the second part, what you were talking about, the male scientist in the lab. I mean, this is like a contemporary rereading of Dr. Frankenstein then.
Yeah, in a way it is, sure.
Yeah. And regarding the first part of the question, Tarzan, I was actually thinking before the talk about Mowgli. But obviously there's not the similarity, the idea of Mowgli in the Jungle Book, not belonging to society and not belonging to the jungle. And in a way, I suppose with Lucy, I don't know if this is the case, that she doesn't really belong either in the human or the non-human world.
Yeah,
but as she says at the end, we are both.
Yeah, she says at the end, we are both. She actually, the very, like, half the book describes a teenager who is in a very difficult situation because she has to come to terms with herself, with her identity. And it's only the moment she realizes that she has to accept who she is, this mix between human and bonobo, and comes public about her true self. And she does so, as I said, in YouTube, which I found pretty interesting. Yeah. She records herself motivated by, her friend Amanda actually motivates the making of the video, and she decides to go public about herself because she wants to be first instead of letting the government or the police to disclose her identity, which I find a very empowering moment, because she's the one who defines herself in public instead of letting others define or say who she really is. So, yeah.
This is a book I must read. I'm going to put it on my list, definitely. I don't know if there are any other questions in the chat, or if anybody else would like to ask any questions, any of the other.
Can I ask
Of
something
course.
if we have time, Lorraine?
Yeah, we have time, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so just another thought for Diana. When you were talking about the theme of nature avenging itself against corporation, I just remembered that this also appears in MELT. So related to the question that you posed when I finished my presentation, in MELT we also have these researchers who are funded by these huge corporations, and there is also this criticism for these companies. And related to the or to your idea or to your comment about the Amazons as the embodiment of this avenging nature, I was wondering if apart from that, you could also, there could exist also any relationship between them and as a representation of empowered women in American society, because for instance, this is sometimes happening in Irish theater. They use, or they rewrite, they use the figure of the Amazon to empower Irish women. So I was just thinking if that could also be read in that way in the case of your works. Thank you.
You go back in history, in American history, you go back to the early 20th century when the fight for obtaining the vote for women was really very much growing in the States. There are wonderful pictures. I mean, pictures that portray women that were American women demonstrating in the streets, and some of them, they actually used this symbol of the Amazons and dressed like them. I don't know how positive that is, but they did use the image of the Amazon as the fighting woman, the warrior. Okay, and let me also say about this idea of avenging nature. In the presentation, I actually illustrated this idea using the cover of a book,
Yes.
Avenging Nature, which was published very recently, and which is a collection of wonderful articles about the idea of a nature that resists being destroyed, resists being used or overused. And I think you can find that volume
Yes,
extremely interesting. I don't
definitely.
remember if there's any article on Irish literature in that book, but it's
I will
worth.
check.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Diana. I will definitely check that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments? Anybody? Are we okay for time? Eva has put a comment here at the end. Can you see it, Diana?
Yeah, there's another question. It says, congratulations. Would you read Lucy's name as an allusion to Lucifer? Then would see her as a hybrid of Eve and the devil? Wow. And where would that place her in terms of a feminist reading? Wow, that's a very daring comment and question. Of course, I'm biased towards Lucy. I liked her and never used of this possible mix. But you are right to some extent in bringing this topic up, because actually, I've been doing also research on the representation of Eve in arts, and how it for a long while Eve was represented together with apes. So you have all sort of paintings, sculptures, images of Eve together with the ape, and the ape, okay, was a representation of the devil. So sure, there's room for that connection. It's actually there. So thanks for your question. Yeah.
There's another comment by
Thanks
Christina.
for your question, Eva. Yeah, and Christina says, actually, wasn't Lucy, yeah, the name given by paleoanthropologists to the oldest female hominid skull found. Yes, and I actually include that in the talk. Yeah, sure. It's the first woman, the mother of all living creatures. And then Eva says, I didn't know the ape symbolism. Thank you very much. Yeah, and we can talk about it. So email me if you're interested in that topic, because it's very, very, very interesting.
It's also interesting, I suppose, the fact that it's not just an ape or a chimpanzee, that it's actually a bonobo that's chosen here.
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the similarities between, well, from what I've read of what I know, the similarities that they're the closest to human beings. Is that correct?
They have to be perceived in a more gentle manner, because, well, chimpanzees are, they can be highly aggressive, while bonobos, well, there's this whole, lots of research done on the fact that bonobos like to sort things out by getting to kind of an agreement. They are very peaceful creatures. Mm-hmm. So I think bonobos have sort of replaced chimpanzees in our imagination of these civilized, so to speak, peaceful apes. Like apes we have to learn from. That would be the idea.
Are we okay for time still, Antonella? Yeah. I heard a bell before, but I don't know if that was somebody's computer or we were being told to, I don't know. Are we okay for time?
We're absolutely fine for time. If you have any further questions.
I suppose thinking about it, this could be like the future Planet of the Apes then?
Oh, no? Yes, but I mean, but this is not the only story you can find about, I mean, the thing is that references to the biblical myth of origin are very much present in general in animal literature, and they are especially present in ape fiction. So it's very, very prevalent, recurrent topic. So it's like when authors think about giving humanity a chance to sort of remake itself, they always think about this myth of origin and connect it to their plot line, their stories.
But ape fiction, I think, is a genre much more from American narratives than well, from British literature, British narratives. There are not many, or Irish either. I can't think of any.
I have a long list of those, so I can share that with you.
You have to,
There's a lot of ape fiction in English, believe me, in Australia, in the UK, in Canada. So, I mean, it's just a question of being interested in it, and then you start, finding all these instances. So, yeah.
No, it's very interesting, I think. Okay, are there any more comments? Any more questions from anybody? No? Although I think these were three very different talks, I think they well brought together some interesting aspects as well, especially related to myth and science fiction. It shows us how broad the spectrum is, I think. And I think it would be nice, as Diana said, if perhaps hopefully next year or the next Myth Criticism Conference, we can meet in real life, not in virtual life. That would be great.
So thank you very much, Lorraine, for moderating this session, which was indeed very varied. And thank you so much for our speakers, Milan, Diana, and Maria del Mar, and obviously all our participants in the chat online. See you later this afternoon, hopefully. Thank you again very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.